parents gave my brother a dream wedding and me a seat behind a pillar when I graduated with honors. Graduation was supposed to be my moment. I was valedictorian, had 2 scholarships, and hadn't seen my family in months. My mom called the night before to say they were so proud, but had to keep things even after spending so much on my brother's wedding. Hi, I'm Drew, 25, and my brother just had a wedding that looked like a Vogue cover shoot, while I got stuck behind a concrete pillar at my own graduation. The ceremony started at 3 p.m. sharp, in the old auditorium with the echoey acoustics and the kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look like they're recovering from the flu. I was graduating summa cum laude, double major, 3 internships, a thesis with a professor who barely spoke to undergrads. My mom wore heels so high she almost toppled twice. My dad brought his Nikon and 2 backup lenses. And yet somehow, some magical, stupid twist of fate landed them 5 rows from the back, and me behind a concrete structural pillar. You could only see my left elbow from their seats. Left elbow. But did they fight for better seats? Did they stand and protest? Nope. Mom whispered. At least we're here. And Dad adjusted the camera lens like it could see through walls. I found out later they didn't even try to reserve seats early. Said they were busy helping Daniel with final wedding prep. Daniel, aka my older brother. Golden child. Human LinkedIn profile. The man who once got a round of applause for parallel parking. His wedding was in 2 weeks. Black tie. Vineyard venue. Personal florist. My mom had been stress posting mood boards for months. I offered to help. She told me, just don't mess up the RSVP. So when my name got called, I stood up with my stole and my ridiculous cap, and I waved like a Disney character to the invisible audience. No cheers. No close-up photo. Just an echo, a foghorn-level cough from someone's grandfather, and the knowledge that my biggest moment was something my parents would only ever see in the rearview mirror of Daniel's big day. Afterward, I asked if we could grab dinner. Just us. Celebrate. You know, like families sometimes do. Dad checked his watch. We've got the caterer walk through at 6, he said. Mom smiled with her teeth and said, let's do something after the honeymoon, okay? I nodded. Said I understood. And that was the exact second I stopped being angry. I got quiet instead. Because when you're the second son, the spare, the side dish at every family banquet, you stop waiting for your spotlight. You learn to light your own damn stage. And mine was coming. The airport goodbye was a formality, not a moment. Mom cried, of course, but it was the kind of cry you give at an airport when you're mourning your own guilt, not the person leaving. Dad clapped my shoulder and said, don't forget to keep receipts for taxes. Daniel texted me an hour later. Proud of you, bro. Let me know if you meet any Swiss models. Classic. No one asked when I'd be back. No one offered to visit. So I landed in Zurich with 2 suitcases, a laptop, and the kind of chip on my shoulder that could steer a cargo ship. My new office was sleek, all floor-to-ceiling windows and espresso machines that spoke 3 languages. They assigned me a flat overlooking the river. I had heated floors. A balcony. Peace. I worked like a man possessed. Because when you're raised on scraps of attention, success becomes your favorite revenge. 6 months in, I led a team launching a product that broke a major competitor's monopoly. My name hit a tech blog. Then a press interview. Then another. Suddenly, I wasn't just the younger brother of Daniel. I was Drew Wilder, the expat engineer reinventing cross-border data integration. Whatever that meant. I sent a photo of the article to my parents. No response for 3 days. When they finally replied, Mom wrote, "That's great, honey! Daniel's starting a podcast." A podcast. About sales strategies. That weekend, I booked myself a spa trip in the Alps. Because if you're gonna be ignored, you might as well be ignored in a hot tub surrounded by mountains and 30 kinds of cheese. But the real turning point? That came 3 weeks later. A package arrived at my office, unexpected, bulky. Inside, a professionally bound photo book titled, "The Best Day Ever, Daniel and Elise's Wedding." I flipped it open. Page after page of them, golden hour portraits, smiling relatives, flower girls throwing petals like confetti bombs. There was even a section of guest quotes. Mine wasn't in it. In fact, I wasn't in a single photo. Not one. Not even the group shot. I closed the book slowly, placed it on the shelf behind my desk, and stared at it like it was radioactive. Because it was. It was proof. Proof that I'd been erased, again, this time in high-res and hardcover. And I'll be honest, I didn't cry. I laughed. Then I got to work. Because I wasn't done yet. The next thing I built wasn't software. It was an invitation. Black cardstock, white embossed letters. Clean. Elegant. Expensive. The kind of thing that makes people pause when they open the envelope. Drew Wilder, keynote speaker, European Innovation Summit. RSVP required. Black tie. Private reception to follow. I sent one to my parents. One to Daniel. One to every extended relative who ever called me Daniel's little brother. Even mailed one to Chase, just for old time's sake. No note. No explanation. The event was hosted at a historic concert hall in Vienna. Chandeliers the size of Teslas. The kind of place where success echoes louder than bloodlines. My talk was slotted between a Nobel laureate and a former EU tech commissioner. 3 minutes before I walked on stage, I got a text from Dad. Impressive venue. Didn't expect all this. That's all it said. Not congrats, not proud of you, just a dry impressive. I nearly laughed backstage. Because that was the thing, they still thought this was about impressing them. But it wasn't. Not anymore. When I stepped up to that podium, I didn't talk about my startup or my degree or even my product. I talked about invisibility. About being the person in the photo no one frames. The name that doesn't make the toast. I told the crowd how being overlooked can either break you or build you. And how, if you're lucky, it does both. I ended with this. You don't have to be seen by everyone to matter. But the day you see yourself? That's the day the lights come on. Standing ovation. People I didn't know shook my hand like I'd handed them fire. A tech CEO offered me a consulting gig on the spot. A reporter asked if I'd ever considered writing a book. Meanwhile, at the reception, Mom hovered near the bar with a glass of something too red. Dad pretended to study a painting. And Daniel finally looked at me like he didn't quite recognize who I was. And he didn't. Because I wasn't Drew the plus one anymore. I was the headliner. I walked over to them, smiling. Glad you could make it. Dad cleared his throat. Your speech was powerful. Mom nodded, blinking too fast. Very personal. Daniel said nothing. Just raised his glass, eyes narrowed like he was trying to solve a math problem with feelings. Thanks, I said. You'll be in the next one. They blinked. Oh, don't worry, I added. You'll recognize the pillar. Then I turned to speak with the editor from Wired who had just walked in. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Front page of Wired Europe, full spread, glossy as hell. Headline: The Ghost Graduate Turned Global Visionary, How Drew Wilder Built from the Shadows. They didn't hold back. The writer, Marla Eames, interviewed half my team, quoted my keynote, and even dug up the graduation seating chart. Yeah. The one with row 22, seat L2. Clearly marked, obstructed view. She opened the piece with, some people get standing ovations. Some get $60,000 weddings. Drew Wilder got a concrete pillar and a gift card for lunch. It was brutal. It was honest. And it was true. The article went viral. Not funny cat meme. Viral, corporate viral. LinkedIn, Forbes reposts, even a retweet from the Swiss Minister of Innovation with the caption, Excellence from anywhere. That's when my phone lit up. Mom, we didn't know it hurt you that much. Dad, interesting read. Didn't realize you felt that way. Daniel, seriously? You aired all that in public? Then a second text from Daniel. You could have just talked to us. I stared at that one the longest. Because I had talked to them. For years. In birthday toasts, in holiday dinners, in every sideline moment where I tried to be seen and got a half nod in return. I responded with one line. This was me talking to you. You just weren't listening. I didn't hear back. A week later, my alma mater reached out. They were redoing the graduation hall. New seats, new layout. The dean personally asked if I'd like to contribute to the design. Maybe name a scholarship while I was at it. I asked one thing. Put a plaque behind the old pillar. I wanted to say, here once sat someone who deserved better. He paused, chuckled, and said, You're not wrong. That Friday, I got a package from Daniel. No note. Inside, a copy of his wedding photo book. This time, with an extra insert. A single picture of me. Standing at the edge of the dance floor, drink in hand, mouth half open mid-laugh. The caption read, He built more than a toast. It wasn't an apology. But it was something. I took the photo out and pinned it beside my Wired article. Not out of nostalgia. Out of clarity. Because here's the truth they never taught me back home. Spotlights don't make you valuable. Pillars don't make you invisible. And the loudest thing you'll ever say is walking away before they're ready to listen. 3 months later, I was back in the States, for a tech conference, not a family visit. But since I was in town, I agreed to meet them for dinner. Neutral territory, a quiet Italian place downtown, the kind with tablecloths and servers who say, still or sparkling, like it's a test of your upbringing. I arrived first. Daniel walked in wearing a Patagonia vest like he'd been summoned from a venture capital summit. Mom showed up in pearls again, like it was a costume she couldn't let go of. Dad brought a printout of my Wired article. Folded. Annotated. They sat. Small talk started like a leaky faucet. Daniel asked about Zurich, about the office. Mom complimented my haircut. Dad, weirdly, ordered the same thing as me, which he'd never done before. Not once. I waited. Finally, over halfway through the meal, Daniel broke. You really think we didn't love you? I set my fork down. I never said that. I replied. I said you never saw me. Not fully. Not without comparing me to someone else's spotlight. Mom sighed. We were just trying to support both of you. You sent me a gift card for graduating with honors. Dad jumped in. We were stretched. The wedding. You paid for custom linens and a monogrammed cigar bar. I got a Starbucks card, Dad. He looked away. Silence. The heavy kind. Not hostile. Just old. Dense with years of skipped birthdays and misdirected praise. I didn't come here for an apology. I finally said. I came to tell you that I'm not angry anymore. They looked up, startled. I'm tired, I said. But I'm not angry. Daniel frowned. Then what do you want from us? Nothing, I said. Nothing more. That's the point. That landed like a slap. Not because it was cruel. Because it was real. You could feel the table shift. Like a family finally realizing they'd been sitting around a version of love that needed receipts and RSVPs. The check came. I paid it. Dad tried to argue. Let us. I've got it, I said. Call it repayment for the gift card. He cracked a smile. So did I. On the way out, Mom hugged me like she was trying to make up for 10 years in 10 seconds. Daniel shook my hand, then pulled me into one of those awkward guy hugs that ends with a back pat and a muttered, You're doing good, man. I nodded. I know. As I walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Like someone who finally stopped auditioning for a role that never fit. Back in Zurich, things moved quickly. A partnership with a Scandinavian logistics firm. An invite to speak at a TEDx. A recruiter from Google pinged me with a job I didn't want, and it felt good to say no like it was a stretch of my own muscles. But the best part? My team. A crew of weird, brilliant misfits who didn't care about your last name or your LinkedIn flex. Just your code, your clarity, your kindness. One night after a late deploy, I found myself sitting alone on our office balcony, same folding chair from our first office, now used ironically, and I got a text. Mom. Would you consider coming home next summer? We're planning a family trip. Not Daniel's idea. Mine. I stared at the message. Not because it was dramatic. Because it wasn't. It was simple. Human. I didn't answer right away. I was still thinking when I heard the door creak behind me. It was Lena, our UX lead and possibly the only person alive who could debug a menu flow and bake perfect lemon bars. She plopped down next to me. You looked like you were about to ghostwrite a country song out here. I laughed. Just thinking. Dangerous, she said, bumping her shoulder against mine. I showed her the text. She read it, nodded slowly. So what's the verdict? I don't know, I said. Feels like the script changed, but I'm still holding a grudge from the first act. She took a bite of her granola bar and said, Then write a new act. Simple as that. Not easy, but simple. That weekend, I booked a surprise flight. Not home. To Vienna again. The hall where I'd given my speech was hosting a tech summit, and they'd asked me to be on a panel. I wasn't even the headliner this time. And I was fine with that. Afterward, I stayed a few days. Walked the city. Thought. Then I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I called Daniel. Hey, I said. Drew? He sounded like he'd seen a ghost who also had equity. Got a question for you, I said. Think I should come to that family trip? Long pause. Honestly? Yes. But not for them. For you. Come if it'll feel good. Not if you're trying to fix anything. I didn't reply right away. I didn't have to. Because maybe this was what forgiveness sounded like, not begging to be seen, but choosing to look back anyway. And this time, I wasn't trying to be the favorite. I was just trying to be whole. The family trip was to Maine. A big rented cabin near the coast, 3 hours from the nearest real airport, and close enough to salt air that everything smelled like a postcard trying too hard. It was the first time we'd all been under one roof in nearly 2 years. I arrived late, unannounced on purpose. I didn't want a banner or a group photo ambush. Just a door that opened. Daniel answered. He looked like he hadn't slept, like parenting 2 toddlers and hosting a family vacation was the emotional equivalent of trying to land a plane on a trampoline. He blinked when he saw me. You actually came, he said. Surprised? He shrugged. A little. You never RSVP'd. I wanted to decide in real time, I said. He nodded, stepped aside. We saved you the room with the least nautical decor. Inside, it smelled like pancakes and sand. The kitchen was loud, Elise wrangling kids, Mom barking into a recipe app, Dad manning a grill on the back porch like it was a submarine control panel. I stood in the doorway for a second too long. Mom spotted me first. Drew! She dropped a ladle mid-stir and barreled toward me. The hug wasn't awkward this time. Just soft. Like she was holding something fragile and finally realized what it was. I wasn't sure you'd come, she whispered. Neither was I said. But then I figured, if I'm going to rewrite the story, I should at least show up for the next chapter. That night, we had a bonfire. No speeches. No PowerPoints. Just esmores and wind and the kind of quiet that didn't feel strained. Daniel sat beside me, passed me a beer. I read your book, he said out of nowhere. I blinked. The one I said was still a draft? Yeah. Elise downloaded it. Said it was better than all the marriage guides we got. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just said, thanks. He paused. Then added, I was an ass. For a long time. I smiled. Yeah. But you were charming about it. He laughed, low and honest. Seriously. I get it now. About the pillar. About all of it. It wasn't just about the seat, I said. I know, he said. But it's where I started seeing it. Later, as the fire died down, I pulled the Wired article out of my bag. I'd printed a copy for Dad. Not to gloat. Not to rub it in. Just to offer a version of me he could hold in his hands without needing a Google alert. He read it slowly, nodding. Then he folded it carefully and said, You've become someone we couldn't imagine. Yeah, I said. Me too. Before bed, Mom handed me a small envelope. Inside? A photo. Me, in my graduation gown, face turned just enough to be seen. Taken from the aisle, angled around the pillar. I found it on my phone. she said. Zoomed in and sharpened it. It's not perfect. I stared at it. Not because it was stunning. Because it was proof someone tried. It's enough, I said. Back in Zurich a week later, I pinned that photo to my corkboard. Right next to the article. Right below the caption that had once made me flinch. The ghost graduate turned global visionary. Except now, it didn't feel like a ghost story. It felt like a beginning. Because this time, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I was seen. And the person doing the seeing was me. The end.